Hello, NAAIA community. Get ready to relive insightful discussions, gain fresh perspectives, and be inspired by the wealth of knowledge our community has to offer. Let's dive into another episode.
So today, again, we're going to be getting into some really sensitive, potentially heavy topics. We're going to be talking about things that may bring up feelings, some discomfort. There may be some mentions of catastrophes, widespread damage, fatalities. If any of those things are topics that you would rather not engage with today, that we highly recommend that you protect your mental health. If you need to step away or sign off, we completely understand. But we're also going to be bringing resources and ways that we recognize this in ourselves, in our staff, and those who are around us. And again, this is intended to build us up, to prepare us for all the things that surround us daily. Also wanted to mention that today is August 21st, so we're a little bit of a a little bit outside of a week away of the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. So just want to acknowledge those of you out there who may have been in the industry during that time, may have been in the field even during that time. It's a very sobering anniversary. So it was August 29th, 2005, when Katrina made landfall. So as we're in the middle of yet another hurricane season, it's important that we just recognize and observe the great work that we do as an industry, that this is a noble profession, and we help communities build back and increase resilience. So with that, I would like to introduce our our moderator for today, and we will get this conversation started. So moderating this discussion for us will be Candace Duncan. She is Claims Director at Security First Insurance. And she's also the Vice President of our NAAIA Orlando chapter. So Candace, thank you so much for taking the reins for this conversation, and welcome to the main stage. How are you feeling today?
Feeling good. Thank you very much, Precious. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this much needed conversation. Thank you, NAAIA National, for the opportunity as well. And as she said, we're in the midst of hurricane season. I'm in Florida, so we all have a lot of experience of dealing with natural disasters, but it'll go beyond just talking about natural disasters and other topics that may affect you as a claims professional. So once again, thank you for the opportunity so we can engage in this discussion.
Amazing. So last keynotes before I step back and allow this conversation to move forward. As we're discussing these topics, just want to issue the disclaimer that none of our participants today are licensed medical professionals. None of the information shared is to be perceived or taken as medical advice. And again, if you need resources or if this brings up feelings of discomfort, we highly suggest that you follow through if necessary. We do want to encourage you to ask your questions in the Q&A box throughout this webinar. This is intended to be an interactive session. And thank you so much again for joining. I'll turn it over to our panelists.
All right, thank you, Precious. I'm just going to give a quick intro of myself. As she says, my name is Candace Duncan. I'm Claims Director at Security First in Florida, and almost approaching 20 years in the industry. Got my start with State Farm officially, but I'm one of the rare people that kind of grew up around insurance. My dad's a State Farm agent, so got to experience insurance there before officially joining. Actually, right after Katrina is actually where I got my start in the industry in claims. Have done claims, call center, billing, internet support, and currently back in claims at Security First. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to let Heather and Brenden introduce themselves. Heather's with JS Held and Brenden is with Fora, but we'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves.
Well, thank you so much, Candace. And I'm so appreciative of NAAIA for having us here today. First of all, I spent 20 years in the insurance industry. 13 of those 20 years were spent in property and casualty claims. So I come at this topic from a place of my heart and soul will always live in the world of claims and with the people who day-to-day work with people in traumatic and distressing circumstances in their lives. Today, in my world, in my day job at JS Held, I create meaningful learning experiences through training and learning and development in my role, and also help with all the spoken thought leadership that our organization does. So I'm really exercising my passion for teaching and training in my job role today. Outside of all of that, I do a ton of volunteer work with the CPCU Society and with the Society of Insurance Trainers and Educators. And once again, we're really excited to talk about this topic. We know it's a tough topic, but it's a topic that needs to be talked about. That's all I got to say. So Brenden, take it away.
All right. Candace, thank you. Precious and everybody at NAAIA, thanks for having me. Thanks for the invite. Before I jump into for me, like there are 55 participants in this, and I just love that. And there's people dropping in, they're saying where they are. Like I do a lot of webinars. Not a lot of people show up sometimes. And so I appreciate all of you guys making this a priority to show up and have this type of conversation. And because it is groups like NAAIA that make it important to have this conversation, and then for you guys to show up validates that there's a need for it. So thank you, because it's really cool to be here. And so a little bit about me, Brenden Corr. I am the director of sales for a company called Fora. I'm on the kind of insure tech side of the business. I've never been in claims. But what we do is we do everything around kind of property survivability. So although Candace, you're in Florida with hurricane season, we help to identify any homes, structures, and how resilient they will be when it comes to natural disasters and the survivability of that home. And then we also provide the mitigation and tools necessary for homeowners to improve their survivability.
Brenden, I don't know. I think we may have lost you on your audio.
Oh,
There we go. We got you back.
okay.
Okay, sorry. I got a phone call and it kicked me off. So then from the reason I'm here is from a personal experience. I got sober about 6 years ago, which helped kind of I had to reevaluate my life. I spent 90 days down in rehab. Thankfully, it allowed me to kind of springboard into the career within insurance, but it didn't come easy. It didn't, it took a lot of work. It took a lot of sacrifice, a lot of growth to get here. And then along the way, and one of the things I'll talk about throughout today is I also, with another industry colleague, started a mental health nonprofit. It's called Project 55. And we have a training that is available to anybody who would like it, that addresses how we engage with our colleagues and communities around mental health in the workplace and potentially at home. So anyways, that was a mouthful. So excited to be here. Yay.
Well, thank you guys both for taking time to tell us a little bit about yourselves, and we'll get to know you a little bit more throughout this discussion. I was fortunate enough to meet Heather through CPCU, and it's just great to see how small our world is and how our paths cross over. And for those of you who don't follow Heather on LinkedIn, she does share a lot of information in regards to like mental health and resiliency. So she's a great one for you to connect with, and also Brian's resource with Project 55. So thank you both for joining us today. So with that said, let's get started with our conversation, and feel free, if you guys have questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll do our best to address them throughout the conversation. But, let's just get started with the conversation. What's one claim that stayed with you, and how did it affect you personally or professionally, or both?
Yeah, absolutely. Candace, I'll jump in here since I have lived in that claims world, and I say this. This is always hard to talk about. I handled auto injury claims for a little while, a little stint in my career. And of course, I was in that operation not by my choice. So it was kind of one of those jobs that I kind of just got pushed into. And that happens in insurance, business decisions are made, and we all get that. But I was constantly exposed to people who were dealing with really traumatic auto accidents. because of the states and the jurisdictions that I worked in and everything. And I'll never forget this one individual who it was an older man, and he had actually was at fault in the accident, and he had killed his wife.
Oh my gosh.
And it was his fault with what had happened. And I struggle talking about that still today. And whenever I saw this as the first question, I go, okay, you're going to be able to talk about it. But I struggle talking about that still today because I didn't know what to say to him. And I had worked in insurance for a really long time, and I had dealt with people who had had a loss of that nature, and I'd seen some really tough things before. But for some reason, that man's story stuck with me. And so that's what I will tell you, that story right there is the catalyst to what set me on a path to really understand the emotional impacts that claims have on claims professionals. Also, because of what I saw in my coworkers around me and their reaction to a lot of things. And it was at that moment that I kind of had that decision that I need to do something about this. I need to start talking about people about this, because my emotional reaction to that, while I was definitely supported by my leader, like he walked up after, I had that hard phone call with that individual. He walked up and he said, "You handled that beautifully. Let's go take a walk together." So I had a great leader that understood that I was having an emotional moment there, because the tears are coming down the face, and I didn't know how to manage that. And I think that's one of the key things that we need to remember, is that it's not just one claim today, right? You have multiple occurrences of this that happen with claims professionals. And they're just like me, sitting in that circumstance, and just like all my teammates and everybody else around me, all of us respond differently to that. And I think the recognition of that is something that we have to do as an industry.
Yeah, wow, what a story. And think of how your experience would have been different if your leader didn't recognize that you were going through that situation in that moment, and pull you away so that you could regroup, because I'm sure your day didn't end after you had that one conversation with the customer, and you would have had to continue to deal with this customer throughout the rest of that claim too. So how you could approach that. So what a great leader. Brenda, I don't know if you have anything maybe in your that you want to share for that, or any experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like, one of the points I was going to make later on, and this, kind of jumps a little bit ahead, is, this idea that like that was just like a singular moment, but it is far more than just like what happened, because it's more than just paperwork. It's more than just all of this, but the actual impact that it had, not only on that individual, but also then for Heather, and then for the leader to have the wherewithal to say, hold on, pause. This is a moment I can see that is impacting Heather, because the trickle up and down, however we want to look at it, is, maybe the next phone call that Heather, you are, if you don't have that break, if you don't have that acknowledgement, you answer that phone call wildly different, right? And then that experience with that other customer is different. You go home and your impact with your family, is different. How you interact with your kids, what you eat at night, right? Like, so the ability for that leader to say, okay, pause, and to take that moment to recognize is so valuable and so important. And I'm certainly glad hearing that you had that moment, because I don't know what the outcome was, but I can guarantee that you felt differently when you showed up the next time for that moment. And it's still emotional, right? It doesn't take away maybe the pain of it, but at least you felt heard and seen. And a lot of times I think, I don't know, maybe people could tell me in the chat, but when those moments happen and then there's just nothing, like it's kind of crickets, and it's just the next phone call, the next phone call, the next email. And so, yeah, I mean, kudos to that leader. What a powerful kind of example he set.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing because we don't know what the next phone call is going to be. It could be a customer that might be upset and start yelling at her, and she's already emotionally, charged with the prior conversation. So, taking that time to step away and reset for the next customer was extremely important. So, thank you for sharing that story, Heather. So, we can kind of piggyback off of that. You were handling those type of claims, so you probably got a lot of those kind of claims. Next question kind of ties into that. How does repeated exposure to emotionally heavy claims like fatalities or disasters impact your mental well-being over time?
Yeah, absolutely. And Candace, I'm so excited because I was on the hunt for a very long time to have some academic research maybe that has been done about this particular topic. And I was even considering at one point, like, I'm going back to college, I'm going to do my doctorate on this subject, and really pull it through, because research has been done for social workers, law enforcement professionals, military, doctors, nurses. There's been academic research that's been done for all of those groups. There has been no academic research done that's been done for anyone in the insurance industry. But I did find out this year, actually, that there was a study that was done by the Chartered Insurance Institute. And I'm happy to get a link to that survey out and kind of let everybody know about it. But the impact that distressful claims has on all of us here, and I apologize, I'm living with a dog, so if you're hearing a dog bark, it's life. People consider career changes. I did at that moment. I was like, maybe I'm not cut out for this anymore, even though I've been in the industry for a long time. People feel disconnect and dissonance, which some of my teammates and my coworkers felt that way. They were like, this is the only way that I can protect my emotional health, is to become cognitively dissonant. And they not to the point of not having any empathy at all, but they got cold. And then, you have impacts with relationships with your family, your colleagues. Some people pursue some unhealthy habits in life. I will say at that time in my life when I was working those types of claims, I probably was not the healthiest person in the world. And I chose some paths that were not the best paths for me as well. Because I wasn't seeing satisfaction and enjoyment, because I was constantly exposed to people in really bad circumstances in their life. And I was struggling managing that with this massive career change from everything that I had done in the past as well, in my career on the property side of everything. So yeah, there are a lot of impacts, and those things carry over time. And it does take resetting yourself and recognizing it, having that awareness of it, to be able to know that there's some steps that you need to take to get healthy after that. Brenden, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I mean, what you're alluding to is, the early signs of just, I don't want to call it corporate burnout. We'll just say burnout in general, right? I would imagine that, it's like a slow drip, because if you don't recognize, again, early on, right, Heather, if we continue your example, it's like the next call would have been different. The next call would have been different. The next call would have been different. And those weigh heavily on you. And it's not to say that your leader, by acknowledging it, took away a lot of that stress, but it certainly impacted how you felt about the day and showing up and going home and then addressing your next set of emails, right? Because burnout is sometimes like an invisible weight. You're just like, you don't really realize it, and then all of a sudden it's like you feel it. You're less productive, you're more irritable, you're tired, maybe you're not working out as much, and then it's like when it actually comes and it kind of hits you like a freight truck. It's like, oh, I've dealt with all a litany of claims that have all been incredibly severe, fatalities, natural disasters, and I'm wearing this stress like a badge of honor. And that we don't need to do that. We don't just have to get through the next day. It's acknowledging those feelings, understanding that it might not be something that should be part of the job, but because it is a part of the job, how do I better help myself? What's my workload life or my workload like? Do I have somebody on my team that I can talk to, that I can share these experiences with? But over time, it can be incredibly draining to somebody. And I don't think that this is just claims, right? This is really could be at any point, but for today, certainly with claims, because of the severity that most people are dealing with throughout the process that they're dealing with, kind of customers, when they're coming to you, it's, yeah, burnout 101 right there.
Yeah, and because you're experiencing it over and over again, you think about how it's affecting you, as well as you have to still show up as your best self for the customer and walk them through this situation where this may have been their first and only claim. You don't want that to negatively affect your work product for them. You still want to do the best job for them and help them through that situation. So, making sure that you're taking the right steps to protect your own personal, mental health and peace, and as well as be there for the customer. It's a fine balance between those two things. So, thank you for sharing that. In your experience, what are the early warning signs? I mean, you kind of mentioned some already, actually, Brenden, but what are some early warning signs of burnout, emotional fatigue, anything that we should be aware of as a claims professional?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start, and then maybe Heather, you can jump in. But I also like to tie this in just as like we're also all humans, right? And so whatever we're feeling at home, kind of back to what I talked about at the beginning, is also then what we take home, and what we are doing at home, we also bring to the office, right? So it's this constant kind of feedback loop. And so in a lot of cases, if we aren't proactive in, maybe the conversations, or how we're taking care of our body, or or how we're engaging with our leaders, or feeling uh that we're doing an adequate job, we also then take those home, right? So then we're showing up differently to our family members, right? And then that also produces, I was late getting my kid to school, and then you're stressed when you come to the office. Well, then when you're stressed when you come to the office, you answer the phone differently, right? So it's this crazy kind of loop. But certainly, burnout and the effects of that are, again, lack of productivity, maybe missing meetings, showing up late. It's anxiety, it's depression, it's maybe the email, your tone in your emails is different, right? And, maybe it even could just be that you're responding different because you have somebody at home that you're taking care of, that is a stressful moment, coupled with a stressful moment at work, right? It's all of these moments that are adding up, and it's kind of clouding, maybe brain fog, and how you would normally be quick to respond to something, it's taking a little bit more time. But certainly all of those factors play into it. And then if you're not paying attention to those things, it doesn't allow you to then to show up as your best self in those moments, when you're supposed to be kind of that representative, that is that voice, that is that piece for that person in that time of need and loss.
Yeah, I was going to say, we show up as whole people every day. All of the things that are part of every piece of our life show up with us. And for claims professionals, they're the same as everyone else. They have life circumstances that they're dealing with at home, that are difficult. You might be taking care of aging parents. You might be grieving in some way with a loss in your life. You might have a child that is struggling with things. You might be dealing with relationship issues, and then all those things come in with you as well. And then you are constantly exposed to people who have suffered some type of catastrophic event in your life, and you have a job to do when you're there. And you have people who have expectations of you in that job and things that you have to churn out and do, because claims, let's face it, folks, it's a mass production operation most of the time, right? The claims aren't reducing a ton in frequency, and they're getting a lot worse in severity right now as well. So all of those emotions and cognitive and social and behavioral responses that people have, 100%, I want all of you to understand that they're completely normal. And it's okay to say that you are not okay as a claims professional. I will tell you that's a generational thing as well. I'm Gen X. We always take care of our own stuff. We picked ourselves up and took care of ourselves. But what I really respect about the generations that are coming into the workforce today is that they are very, very keyed in to understanding their own balance with their mental health and how it kind of shapes who they are. And they're okay talking about that. My generation wasn't so okay talking about that. We didn't want to release that out into the world. And what I've realized is that claims professionals need those communities of people around them, so that you have people who can recognize those signs in you when you start displaying them around them. And I think that's one of the most powerful things you can do, is just become an ally for the people around you. When you work in those environments, hey, I'm hearing you, and how can I help? What's going on? Talk to me. And maybe they don't want to talk. I kind of learned that with some of the people that I worked with, in the various environments that I work with. Some people don't want to talk, and that's okay. And I would just say, I'm just going to sit here for a while, and we're just going to sit together. That is a way you can help, is just by being there for other people in these circumstances, and recognizing when those types of behaviors or changes in behavior start coming out in them. It could be that they are having some of those impacts happening in their life.
Yeah, those are all great points, Heather. I think a lot of times we'll recognize that if you haven't been in claims, it's kind of hard to understand the life of a claims professional. So you may want to go and talk with other people at home, but they just don't get it. So having those that are in claims that you can go and talk to, or they recognize the signs with you, and maybe they tell you, you know what, you might want to just take a lap around the pond right now. And then come back inside. Those are great tips, because not everybody responds the same way. And I'm going to get to you, Brenden, in just a second. I do want to just give everybody a reminder. Put your questions in the chat. We do have one that we'll bring that one up as soon as you finish, Brenden. But yeah, if you have any questions, put it in the Q&A chat box, please. Go ahead, Brenden.
Oh, I saw Aaron's question pop up, and so I was gonna offer a couple, kind of in this way of like blending, how leaders, can start to, they can normalize different types of conversations that are taking place in these workforces. So that way, Aaron, your question of our tips and advice, certainly, work out, eat healthy, sleep. I believe those three are by far, and not workout, but just exercise, move your body. But just those three alone are arguably the three most important things every day in my life, regardless of how stressed I am, regardless of what I have going on. Those are kind of my non-negotiables. And I believe that as individuals, we should have a list of that, right? And it could be reading a book, it could be going for a walk, it could be, you have a favorite coffee shop near your office. But it's when you feel those moments, how can I step away? But I also believe that it starts with some of these leaders. It starts with saying, Candace, hey, oh, I'm gonna, hey guys, I need a break. I'll be back in 10 minutes. I have been a long day so far. I'm gonna head to my favorite coffee shop, right? Or something like that, that shows that it's okay to take those moments in the day or to have the questions. And I'm gonna leave you with one example of kind of, and I saw this as an email from somebody that he was a leader, and the email was an all staff kind of, or not all staff, but it went to a bunch of people. But at the bottom of the email, it said, I'm responding to this email at a time that is convenient for me. You are welcome to respond to the email at a time that's convenient for you. Now, that might seem like not a big deal, but he sent the email, the timestamp was 4:36 a.m. Right? And sometimes we get these emails because we're so connected. And it's like that instantly causes stress, that instantly causes this anxiety in people when they look at it. And so, not that it has to do with a leader, but it's, how do we prioritize our response to things, right? Do we have boundaries around our work life? I don't know. I don't believe that work-life balance is a thing anymore. I think it's more work-life boundaries. But I believe in those types of things, that I don't need to respond because I heard the ding on my phone at 4:36 a.m. My boss just happened to be in London. So he's responding because it's 8 a.m. over there. Whatever, I don't know, but it's the idea that how do we lead by example, but also creating those healthy boundaries and things that are important to me as a person, so that I'm also doing those and making sure I'm honoring those.
And I just want to take a moment just to put the question out there just so everyone knows. The question was, do you have any tips or advice to figure out ways to make changes to reverse that feeling of burnout? Just so everybody knew why we were leading into that question. But I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to
Sorry.
add to that. It's okay. It's all right. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that, to give some tips.
I would just definitely say self-awareness is so important. And then if you're a leader, know your people. Like, be connected to your people enough to know their responses, their triggers, their things that happen with them, and know the things that are going on in their life. And I know that sounds so odd today because people are often like, we got to keep everything private. We're not going to talk about that, except we're going to talk about it on social media, maybe. Be aware of your people and the things that they might be struggling with. Know the type of claim files that are being handed to them as well. If you notice that one of your people working on your team gets 5 claims in a row where someone has either been traumatically injured or someone has died, maybe that's a moment to step in and think about some controls that you can put into place as far as the files are concerned. And then I'll just go back to Shannon's statement in the chat there. Never enough hours in the day. I think that's just like the motto of claims professionals. There are never enough hours in the day. But the reality is you show up every day and you do the thing that is going to help people with their lives. And remember that as well. I don't think we focus enough on how noble of a profession that claims is. It's got a bad rap. People put it down. And that's another stress and pressure, by the way. The social pressure of the job right now, I think, is also another thing that adds to the plate of claims professionals. And the fact that you feel like you cannot meet everybody's needs and people are relying on you for their livelihood, what a weight to bear on your shoulders. But realize that you are doing good things with every single claim that you handle. You are helping people to put their lives back together after a catastrophic event. And leaders who continuously remind their claims professionals of that are doing a good thing to help them to manage some of that social stress that's associated with claims handling today.
So that's a great point to tie into the next one. How do you manage empathy while maintaining professional boundaries when dealing with grieving or angry, clients, or all of those outside influences, whether it be, society and how they look at us, and maybe even family members. I've had it from family sometimes where they call insurance as a scam. And I'm like, come on now. So how do you work through that?
Well, number one, I always looked at it as it wasn't about me. The harsh words that people might say when they're angry or when they're escalated, it is really not that about me. It is about the circumstances that they are in at that moment. And in my claims career, I not only handled stuff over the telephone with people, and I guess we always had the motto and the attitude of everybody's like 6 foot tall and 300 pounds on the phone. And there's really not a lot that they could do. But in today's world, I understand the heightened stress because it feels like people are more angry today. And actually, there was a study that was done about that. The World Happiness Index has been going down since 2020. And there's a group out there that actually studies that. So just be aware that you as a claims professional are dealing with your own stress and circumstances, right? Because we're living in these odd worlds where people are kind of isolated and separated, working remotely or hybrid a lot of the time. Well, the people on the other end of the line are the same as well. And I think if you can find that space with individuals who are at that heightened level of stress, um, and 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 keep your own feet underneath you at the same time, be calm. I used to meditate when I was in claims as well, just to try to recenter myself, and did some breathing exercises as well to try to, kind of bring that stress level down after either you've been in, face to face with someone in a circumstance where they're yelling in your face, or, calling you names or doing things like that. Most of the time, if you remain as calm as you possibly can in those circumstances, people will be able to de-escalate. But you also got to realize that there are some moments where you have to walk away, or maybe just say, I have to end this conversation until you're ready. And I think oftentimes we feel some stress as a claims professional, like that's the wrong thing to do. But you don't have to stand for being verbally abused by people, or people that are angry. And I always thought of it this way. My grandmother was the quietest, nicest person on the planet, very soft spoken, but I could hear her get very, very angry with my grandfather at times. And I would always think about it, behind that anger might be that really quiet person like my grandma was. They just are in a heightened stress circumstance right now. And it's not about me, it's about the circumstance that they're in. And understanding that helps you to at least have that type of a boundary to be able to manage through the moments when people are really inflamed.
Brenden, do you have anything you want to add to that? She gave us a lot of tips there, and I think I have another question I want to tie in to follow that up, but do you have anything you want to add to that?
Go ahead with your question, because I got a whole thing I was going to bring in. So yeah,
Okay.
you guys rock and roll.
Absolutely. So, she mentioned a couple things that she used to do when she was in claims, meditating. But, what are some daily or weekly wellness practices to help us reset, stay grounded during emotionally intense claims?
Like Brenden said, like working out, centering yourself every day in the morning. I mean, I'm a religious person, so therefore I'm going to read in the morning, centering myself on things that would calm my soul in some way, were always good for me. And then I'm also a very social person. So being around other people and getting to talk about the things that had happened to me, that I process things outside of myself. So if you're not like that, that's okay. But if you are somebody, find those key partners of people that you know in your life, and be able to talk to them. Mine was my husband. He's former law enforcement. He understood a lot of the times what those stressful circumstances that I would go through and everything. And I would just talk and talk and talk, and he would just listen and listen and listen. And if you happen to be the recipient of a claims professional just talking at you, just know they're processing. They're trying to get through it. That was how I would manage the stress as well. I used to call my friends, that I wasn't close to, but they were in the claims profession as well. I was like, you're not going to believe what happened today. You mentally get through that circumstance by talking through it with other people who understand. And that's exactly what I've done.
Brenden, do you have anything that you
Yeah.
want to add to that?
I mean, I got a bunch. So I think so one thing that I know is in again in the claims world, again, this can be wherever you'd like to go, but is like kind of a couple different things. Is the empathy map is very important, right? There's kind of 4 quadrants to it. It's, what is the claimant thinking, feeling, saying, and doing, right? So you kind of can identify each one of those in anticipation of a potential claimant's conversation or loss, because then it allows you to kind of take a step back. And if you kind of walk through those, it allows you then to kind of put yourself in their shoes. And again, not that you have to do this with every single one of them, but as it relates to kind of holding space for empathy, but yet having the ability to also, process through your job. And so kind of those 4 things I think are important. And, there's certainly a lot more that goes into it. But then the other piece of this that I really wanted to connect on is it's called the care response model. And so the C stands for connect with their reality, right? So it's, how am I acknowledging that this situation for them is so disruptive? We know we know that inherently, but how are we assuring them that I feel that way? And then A is acknowledge the specific concerns that they are stating. I understand that your child has a trip coming up and you want to maintain a routine. Maybe, and then R is respond with clarity, support. Like maybe it can't be a exact direction, but it's more with here's what we can do today, and here's maybe what we can do tomorrow, right? So there are clear expectations, and even Shannon, that gets back to your kind of thing that you put in the chat there a second ago as well, but just clear expectations. And then E is empower. What can they control? How are you in control, and what can they be in control of? Like, here are 2 or 3 things that you can do in the meantime. So those are a couple different techniques that are super valuable. Again, they can go anywhere, but certainly here, I think it's very important within the claims world of that communication style. I don't want to say it's de-escalation, but it's how do I have that real empathetic conversation? Because a lot of times you guys are handling the claimant's worst moments in their lives, and that can be incredibly challenging without the right resources and tools.
Yeah, and I think you have to think about it like some claims are going to be short claims that you turn over really quickly, and some you're going to have that insured for a while. So it's great to build the trust between the insured. It's going to help just your relationship with the insured, and the whole claim move forward in the right direction, and get things accomplished for them. So hopefully they feel satisfied at the end of that claim. So yeah, thanks for sharing some of those tips. In terms of things that I do to help reset, sometimes it's just as simple as just taking a walk. When you feel yourself getting, like to your limit, just go outside and just take a break. I like walking. I'm fortunate enough to live close enough to the beach. I don't live on the beach, but close enough to the beach where sometimes it's just walking out there in the evening after the day is over and just, hearing the ocean and watching that. But I do like to be outside. And I'm a little inconsistent with the health practices in terms of exercise, but yeah, and definitely, making sure you're getting enough sleep, because obviously we don't get enough sleep. You probably don't want to see me on like 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I'm not probably a very nice person, but so yeah.
Uh,
You
there's
want to
there's
repeat
a
the
question here.
acronyms?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a so the acronym is CARE, CARE, and the first one is connect with their reality. And then A is acknowledge their specific concerns. R, respond with clarity and support. And then E is empower with the next steps and control. And those are just ones that we've come up with through Project 55, and it's how I've kind of knew about this stuff as I was talking about it. But they can be, tailored to each of you, and find a way that works. I think the idea is does that can I find a way that, Heather, that the CARE framework works for you? It might be a little bit different for Candace, for Precious, for everybody, right? Like, it doesn't have to be the same. The concept, though, is this a framework that I kind of like and that I understand conceptually and that I can implement that would help me in my day-to-day?
Yeah, and you probably can use it not just with your insured, your customers, but also just in your relationships on your teams as well, with whatever they're going through. Like you guys said earlier, you bring your whole self to work. So if we're building trust on our teams and recognizing those signs, that can be something that we can use to help, move people forward to the next step, especially as leaders. As you're having people on your team, you're trying to coach them to be the best the best person that they can be so that they can perform well. Building those relationships and using that might be a framework they can use to, help coach them. So thank you for sharing that. All right. And the next question we're going to go through is just maybe steps to move forward as an industry in general. I know Heather mentioned some things, some differences between the generations in terms of how we approach this, and you mentioned some things that leaders can do to recognize signs, but, how should companies approach training and onboarding to prepare new adjusters for the emotional realities of the job?
Well, number one, insurance is in the business of protecting against risk, right? And managing the risk that people have in their lives. I don't think that most of the industry has recognized that this is an existential risk to the insurance claims industry, especially. But across the ecosystem, because people, number one, are the number one priority and the number one valued asset for the insurance industry, because it's a very relationship-based business. I think I'd refer back to the study that I was talking about just a moment ago from the Chartered Insurance Institute. Number one, there's a huge stigma for people to respond and ask for help or mental health support. This study found that 94% of the respondents did not ask their employer for mental health support following their exposure to distressing features from claims handling. So folks, I know that's a barrier for carriers in the industry right now. Your people are not going to come to you and ask for help with this most of the time. It's kind of the nature of the job too. Claims professionals are often, they're like the hardy John Wayne kind of people, if you get the reference. They cowboy these situations most of the time. But I take myself back to a story that was told by an individual that I think all of you need to seek out as well. His name is Dr. Ray Shelton. He's been talking about this subject much longer than I have and has done a lot more research into it than I have as well. But he talked about how there's these imprints that happen in your people. And he calls them the imprints of horror, and they carry with you over time. And then at some time, the floodgates are going to break at some point. And he was telling a story about a 30-year claims adjuster who was going out on a catastrophic loss event where a tornado had ripped through an area and a little girl was sitting there holding her dead dog. And of course, he has seen circumstances like that before. This claim, 30 years in the industry, that moment broke him. But he didn't realize that that was kind of building up over time, because in the industry, many times it's frowned upon to just say, I'm having an issue right now. So the things that companies need to do is you need to proactively train people right now and give them the resources and the tools to equip them to be ready to understand the nature of the impacts of that job, but also how do you respond in those types of circumstances? What do you do? Because 94% of them are not going to come to you and ask you for help. But you've got to make sure that they know that those resources are there and that you can offer them out to you, and include that as part of the onboarding and ongoing training that you have. That's 100% my recommendation, my secret sauce recipe for success on how to manage this, what I consider to be an existential risk to the insurance industry right now.
And I think that's a great comment you just put in the chat, Brenden. You want to say it out loud so everybody can hear it, your last one?
Yeah, Heather, yeah, you said that the other day, and I went and found it. I gave a talk a couple months ago, and in my talk, to stay in for the Georgia Big I said, in insurance, we're experts at protecting other people's risk, but when it comes to our own stress, our own health, our own pain, we wait. You know, and I have these stats. 75% of workers in the insurance space, not claims specifically, say they have experienced symptoms of anxiety and depression at work. And then 83% say that any of the stress that they've felt, they take home. Like, that's crazy. And you know, we're all here in the insurance space. So I think we need to do better. But this isn't just an insurance problem, right? We are also, this is a conversation that needs to happen more globally and around and in our communities. But I will tie in, this is why we built Project 55. You know, project55.org, if you'd like to check it out. Myself and a colleague from the insurance space, we built Project 55 to be a place where people from within the insurance industry can go and get resources and communicate with other like-minded individuals around mental health. But then also, as of June 11th, we actually launched our own mental health training program. We spent 2.5 years building it. It is completely free. You can use it. I encourage you to go and sign up. And the goal is for CSR, claims, managers, leaders, doesn't matter. The goal is to begin to build vulnerability, to begin conversations, to begin communication, and give everybody across the ecosystem the same tools. So that way we all are recognizing if somebody is struggling, and then we all have the same tools and the same information on how to address those. So would love to chat with anybody also about that outside of this, but just a little plug, because it is training. It does give you the tools. So
yeah, and that's great. When you shared it yesterday, when we got to chat a little bit yesterday, I immediately shared it with our learning and development manager, because we are actually, we just revamped our claims examiner training. We have a class that just started on Monday, and we realized the need to have mental health and resiliency tied into their training. So this is going to be the first class that we have that's actually going to have that as part of their claims training. So any resources you have, because it's going to be new for us, you know, we were eating that up. So we shared that. And then also Dr. Shelton, we were fortunate enough to have him come to our company maybe a couple of years ago, and we're trying to actually get him back so that we can incorporate that. So those two resources are very valuable, and we will be using them. So thank you. So yeah, I don't know if I don't see any other questions. If you have some questions, once again, drop them in the Q&A. I know we got like 5 minutes left. You know, now's the time. Ask your questions. You know, we have everybody available. I think we're going to all put our information out there if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn, or you can look us up. I think our names are not common enough where you can look us up by our name if you want to connect and continue the conversation. But we'll give you a minute or so and see if you have any additional questions.
Yeah,
The
Gordon,
link in the chat for the
there you go.
Project 55. Yeah. It's in
Yeah,
there.
project55.org. Also, if you guys are interested, you can find me. I'll also just put my email in here. And that way, please feel free, if you want to talk about it privately afterwards, feel free to shoot me a note, and happy to discuss with anybody and everybody. But this was so good. I love it.
All right. I don't think I see anything in the chat. I see Precious is up. So we're going to turn it back over to Precious. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate you coming and spend a little time with us.
Thank you for watching this flashback episode with NAAIA. We appreciate your time and hope you found the insights valuable. Stay tuned for more enriching content. Until next time, thank you for being a part of the NAAIA community.